to the first episode of the new season of Book Talk with Kara. And I am so excited because today I have my good friend Lynette Eason back with us, and we are here to talk about her new book, Double Take. And I have to tell y'all, I have been a fan of Lynette's books for a long time, but this one had me turning the pages so fast. I don't even know how you came up with the idea for this, but before we start talking about it, Lynette, why don't you tell our listeners just a little bit about who you are and how you got started writing?
So I'm Lynette Eason, and I live in South Carolina. I'm married, a couple of kids, one in law school. Please, Lord, let her finish the third year. And she's almost done. And another one who lives here in town that I see quite frequently. And I got started writing when my husband was traveling. He's been in the ministry. We've been in the ministry forever. And so he was traveling, doing camps and conferences in a band and doing music and stuff. So he was gone quite a bit. And as you can imagine, I was kind of lonely. So I just decided to talk to the voices in my head. Doesn't that sound
I love that.
interesting? So that's how I got started. And I wrote for 8 years before I got published. And so here we are.
I love that. And I think for most of us, there was something like that. There was a season where our spouse was busy, or there's just kind of a gap where we could start writing. And your books are that page turning, pulse pounding suspense, and they always have been. But there was something about Double Take that from the very first page, you created this tension. You've got this woman who's in bed, everything's supposed to be okay, and it is not. There is a lot of things going on from that very first sentence and page. How did you get the idea for Double Take?
I get that question a lot. How do you get the ideas for your stories? And the truth
Yep.
is, I don't know. I just say God gave it to me because I've written so many books that I feel like I'm starting to sound the same. Like I don't ever want somebody to go, oh well, if you've read one, you've read them all, you know.
Yeah.
And so I got the idea. I guess I was thinking I wanted something more along the lines of a psychological thriller kind of feel to it with a thread of romance in there, which is, romantic suspense. That's my brand. I have to stay true to. So I wrote the synopsis for this story, believe it or not, like 5 years ago. And I
Oh,
know. And it's just been sitting there, and I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do with it. I originally kind of wrote it with maybe self-publishing in mind, or something like that. But then as I started writing my next the proposal that book was in, I pulled that back out to look at it. I thought, no, I don't want to send this in because when you have a story sitting in the back of your head for so long, I don't know about you, but I start to envision different scenes and different conversations, and I'm like, okay, I am ready to get this story out of my head and onto the page. And so that was book one in that proposal that I sent in a couple of years ago. So anyway, I really don't know where the idea came from. It just, you know me, I'm a
yeah.
pantser.
I love it. Well, psychological suspense is a little different from like an outwardly driven suspense, which a lot of years there's like a bomb or something that's getting ready to go off. So
Right.
how would you define psychological suspense versus what you normally write?
I would say it kind of boils down to the internal external conflict battle, maybe. Not battle, but okay, maybe. And
Yeah.
so I wanted it to be more like mind games, like he was playing with her head and making her doubt herself and making her believe she was seeing things that weren't there, that couldn't be possible. Um, it's just, I don't want to give away the story, but it's just
Yeah.
like, this whole it's mind games is what it is. And but there is that actual physical danger that's there. For a reason you don't find out until the end. But I don't know. I had such fun writing that. I might revisit that and go back to playing mind games with people.
Well, and that was, as I was reading it, I think that was what made it so engaging as a reader, and something I kept coming back to when I didn't have time to read it was there was this kind of psychological, well, what is going on? Is she crazy? Is she seeing what she's seeing? She doesn't seem crazy, but there's something that doesn't seem like it could be possible. And then because I know you, I was like, okay, so what is Lynette up to? How is she doing this? And that's what's always fun, especially when I'm reading books early, because I read this for endorsement. So I'm reading it while I know it's still going through like one more layer of edits and things. And yet I was so engrossed. I could not walk away from it. But
Thank
when
you.
you're writing a book like this, and it's slightly different from the normal romantic suspense that you're writing. I mean, it's still on brand for you because there's still this suspense, there's still this ticking time bomb, there's still like this intensity, but it is different because it's much more psychological. What was challenging about it? Were there parts where you were like, okay, I don't know what I've done now. I don't know how to get my characters out of this, where it was new and different from like your typical book?
Oh my word, if you could see the edits on this.
Oh, those edits. They're so much fun.
Well, because I did write myself into so many corners, and I just, listen, my editors are genius, pure genius. I mean, it's just some of the suggestions that they came back with, like, okay, you're here, we need to get to here. How did you exactly plan to do that? Because it's not, I'm like, oh, yes, you're right. And, I don't know. Wait, what's the question again? That's what my brain was doing, and
Yeah.
um, I had a lot of notes. Like like I said, I'm a pantser. I just kind of write and go with the flow and everything. But this one, I had to do so much meticulous planning for, so that when it goes back, when the reader looks back, when they're all done, the reader looks back and they go, I didn't want them to say, you took shortcuts, and,
Mhm.
this kind of thing. I wanted them to look back and go, oh, I
Yeah.
should have seen that back here. And so I hope that I've done that. But yeah, it was the note taking, and um it was bouncing stuff off of other writers, it was bouncing stuff off my editor, and really trying to get the book where it made sense.
Yeah.
And the whole thing with there was the whole thing with ooh, if I say that, I'm probably going to give it away. Well, there was
Yeah.
some legal things that I had to research really deeply and come up with ways around that.
Yeah.
And anyway, it was an interesting ride. Let's put it that way.
Well, and that was what was, as I was thinking about it and knowing you and knowing you're a pantser and thinking about how you were having to draw all these connections. If I were going to guess, I was going to be like, that probably was it. And that's where editors, like a really good editor, is worth their weight in gold because they help you. They don't just point out, this is what's not working. They then help you figure out,
Yeah.
here's how you might get there, but then
Mhm.
go, but it's your book. You have to figure out what works best for your story. But sometimes, even just that, have you thought about this? Or have you
Yes.
thought about that? Or I love hopping on a call with my editor after I've kind of let their letter percolate in my mind
Yeah.
for a day or two. And I'm like, okay, now can we hop on a call and I can tell you what I was thinking and we could talk through why what I was thinking didn't end up on the page or why it wasn't working and figure out what might work.
Mhm.
So I always like to ask writers, you've spent a lot of time with your heroine. Do you think you would get along if she was a real person?
I do. I like Lainey. I admire her. and there are some things about her that might get on my nerves, but in general, I think I would be friends with her just because she's been through so much. She's overcome so much. Um she's just an admirable person, and
Yeah.
what she teaches us through this story is that your past doesn't have to define your future. I do that a lot with my stories. I don't know
Mhm.
why. I don't particularly have a checkered past or anything, but I have compassion for those who do, and I
Yeah.
like that it comes out in my stories some. Yeah, I hang out with her, and
Yeah.
especially toward the end of the book, once she's gotten past a lot of her issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like Lainey. Yeah,
Well, and I mean, and you did. You hung out with her for like 4 months or 5
I
months while you were
did.
writing the book and then editing it and then editing it again. So
Yeah.
did you she's a she's in medicine. Did you ever aspire to go into medicine? Was that ever something that you were like, "Oh, maybe I could do this?" Because like I thought for like 2 days, "Oh, I could be a nurse." And then I woke up and went, "I don't like blood. I don't like bodily fluids. It's probably not the right career for me."
I'm with you. I don't like blood or bodily fluids. I I thought about it briefly. Like when I was a kid, if you asked me what I wanted to grow up to be, I would say a pediatrician, because I
Mm,
loved kids. And but as I got older, that just kind of faded, and I was no, I don't think I want to. My dad was in real
yeah.
estate and business, and that's basically what I saw as you know a teenager and on into college and stuff. So I ended up majoring in business and finance, actually. And then
Oh,
I know I have a double major in finance and real estate. And then I went and got my master's in teaching of all things. So um so yeah, it makes for the perfect writing career. Um
absolutely.
yeah, you learn all kinds of stuff though that you can use in the writing. So that's cool. Um so yeah, so I forgot where I was going with that, but yeah.
Yeah, so medicine never kind of fit into that.
Oh,
Um,
medicine. Yeah. I have family that's in medicine, and I also have a good friend two good friends actually, who are medical doctors. And so when I need medicine advice, I just text them and say, "Hey, I need to shoot
yeah.
somebody. Where should I shoot them so they don't die immediately?" kind of thing. And they're like, now they're used to
Yeah.
it. Now they're like, "Oh, that's cool. You're working on another book."
Yeah. Let me tell you that that's great because you do tend to have characters who end up being around medicine, if not specifically in it. So that's great that you've got those resources. But if you could spend a day with a popular author, who would that be?
Ooh, oh, so many choices. That's not fair to
I
ask
know.
for one. No, I would set up a
Isn't that
retreat
fun
and
though?
I would just invite all my friends. You, um,
It would be so fun.
I know. You know who I'd really like to hang out with though? I'd love to hang out with Dee Henderson because I
Yes.
have actually never met her in person, but she played such a huge part in mentoring me and getting me to where I am today, I guess.
That's awesome.
I would never be where I am without her. And I'd love to meet her in person sometime.
Hey, how did she help mentor you?
So, oh, this was ages ago, like 24 years ago, maybe. Um, I was teaching high school actually,
Yeah.
and writing. I wanted trying to write my first book, and I came across her book in a bookstore. It was The Negotiator.
Love that
I
book.
know, isn't it awesome? And so I was like
Yeah.
one of her first ones, and I didn't
Yeah.
realize. So I went back and found Danger in the Shadow. I can't remember which order I
Yeah.
read it, but anyway, in the back of one of those books was her email address, and I thought, hmm. So, so I just simply emailed her and said, I just want you to know that I love your stories. This is, I've never read anything like your books before. It's just a perfect blend of romance and suspense and exactly what I love. And just to let you know, I want to be like you when I grow up one day. And so, and I just said, I'm writing a book and I just aspire to be as good as you are someday. And so she wrote me back, Wonder of Wonders, and
So
said, well, feel free to ask me any questions about writing that you want to ask. And I was like, well, all right then. And so I sent her a list and she answered them. And then when I finished that story, it's never sold, but um, she asked me to send it to her. And I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't
Yeah,
know how horrible it was. Um, but I sent it to her and she like slit her wrists on the keyboard. That thing bled red, you know. And, and so but when she gave me feedback on the story, she would highlight stuff in, okay, so the point of view. Here is a point of view in his head, and here you're in her head, and here you're in his head. Here's what you're supposed to do. You just need to be in one point of view per scene. Well,
mhm.
that's how I learned about point of view. And then, I mean, just all kinds of helpful stuff like that. And
That's awesome.
yeah, and so that's what she did. And that's how I learned to write.
That's that is so cool because that's kind of what Colleen did for me, where it wasn't that detailed and involved, but that encouragement of you can
Mhm.
do this. I believe in you. And that email response. And just, it's so cool how God will put the right person in front of you at the time you need it to make you believe that writing is such a crazy dream when you
It
think
is.
about it. The idea that you chased it for 8 years
Uh-huh.
and how many people would just give up and you didn't. And I'm so glad because I love your books. But so many people would have just been like, nope, that's not going to happen. And yet you had the guts to email Dee, and then she responded and helped you so that you could become
Yeah.
a writer. And now what I love is you now do so much teaching and mentoring of writers and kind of paying it forward in so many ways. That's just beautiful to watch and
Thanks.
helping other people with their dreams, which is just
Oh, I hope
awesome.
so.
Yeah, no, it's great. And so I love that. And that's just part of the beauty of the body of Christ and how
Yeah.
it comes out in just the different ways that God calls us. And
Yes.
so, so cool. So, when you're writing, what's your schedule look like?
A non-schedule?
Yeah.
No. So I've added the agenting thing into my schedule now, as you know.
That's right.
Yeah, and so I get up in the morning. I try to have my quiet time, and it just really kind of depends on what I need to do. Sometimes it's the morning, sometimes it's the middle of the day, sometimes it's the afternoon. I don't know. God doesn't care because I
Yeah.
just do it when I can. But then I really jump into the email stuff. Um,
Mhm.
I first look at all if I have any agenting emails I need to take care of. This morning from like 7:30 to I guess it was right up until about noon-ish, 11-ish. I was taking care of agent stuff. And so I was like, 4 hours had passed and I was like, what? So,
Yeah.
and then I'm also planning this book tour. Well, Ravel is planning this book tour, and then I'm helping and contacting some of the bookstores and trying to set that up. So I spent some time doing that, and then it was time to jump on the Zoom with you. And once
Yay.
we get, yeah, it's fun. I actually get to interact with somebody.
Yeah. I know it's so rare.
Yeah. And then later this afternoon, after we're done, I will jump to my novella that I'm working on. It's due November 1st. And so I am just wrapping it up, kind of finishing it up. And then I'll go hang out with my husband some. And then before I go to bed tonight, I will start looking at the next book that's due in March. And so I have a full day. I mean,
Mhm.
I spend my days answering emails, a lot of emails,
And
lots of
isn't it
emails.
crazy? There's so
Um,
much email. So
so much.
why did you add agenting? What made you decide, you know what, I'm going to add a hat and it's going to be agenting?
It sounds crazy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So thinking about it for a couple of years, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And just thinking what's beyond, what's
Mhm.
next, I've written over 65 books, I think. And so I probably will not continue at that pace indefinitely. But and I still have 6 books to write for Revell, and then I have another proposal that's ready to go when it's time. I think that's sometime in 2025. I'm not sure. Anyway, um, but I started thinking, I was like, gosh, in 5 years, in less than 5 years, more like 4 years and a month, I'm gonna be 60. And I'm like, that just seems impossible. And I'm like, I honestly don't know if my brain is going to cooperate that long for me to continue writing as
Yeah.
much. And so anyway, all that to say is I was thinking about the future and I contacted Tamla, who's my agent, and I was like, I'm kind of thinking about this, explain the whole thing to her. And I was like, would you be open to just kind of mentoring me and that kind of stuff? And she's like, absolutely. And so the next thing I know, Steve was calling me, Steve Bobby. This was back in the end of April. And he was like, so a little birdie told me you're interested in agenting. And we had a long talk about what all that entailed and about how it would work with my writing schedule and how many clients I think I could
Yeah.
handle in addition. But I'm not writing for Love Inspired anymore. So that did open up quite a chunk of time for me to be able to do that. So after some back and forth, he was like, well, why don't you join the agency? And I was like I'm gonna say no. Uh,
Exactly. That's
yeah,
great.
yeah. So I said yes, and it's been my first official day was May 8th. So it's been almost 6 months now. I've learned so much. I'm working with some incredible people, some incredible authors. So it's just all good. And maybe I will quit writing at some point. I don't know. I'll probably never quit writing, but I won't be doing what I'm doing now, obviously. And I really would like to focus on the agenting thing more, in a few years than, like full time. And
Yeah.
yeah,
That's awesome. Well, and
thanks.
it makes so much sense with all the mentoring that you already do with authors that it's kind of that next step of
Yeah.
helping other people pursue their dreams and, you know, chase what God's calling them to do with their writing. So I love it. So,
Yeah.
on that theme, what's one thing you would tell your younger self if you were going to go back to the beginning when you were starting to write and starting to pursue publication? What's one thing you would go back and tell yourself to do differently? Or would you say, no, stay the course, you did it the right way?
I would say don't be quite as obsessive about it. Don't I would honestly I would say make sure you're not just taking care of your spiritual and mental self, but take care of your physical self as well, because I kind of didn't do that and I'm paying for it now in my mid 50s with some health issues. Nothing major or anything, but yeah, and
Yeah.
don't let it become all consuming. Yeah, it's great to have dreams. It's wonderful to have goals. You want to fulfill the calling that God has on your life. Um, but make sure you're checking in with him to make sure you're doing it right.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. And it's so easy to get kind of sucked into,
Mhm.
I it doesn't matter what stage of writing you're in. There's always someone else who seems to have it easier or be further down the road or
Yeah.
whatever. And I was telling some of my freshman women where I teach, I was like, don't compare your chapter 1 with someone else's chapter 20. And I always have to remind myself of the same thing. You never know. It's
Yeah.
so easy to get kind of stuck in the I got to keep doing more and more and more because someone else is further down, but we don't know how many years they've invested to get where they are and what journey God has them on versus the journey he has you on, or what season of life they're in versus the season of life that you were in. And so that's all such great advice. And, making sure you're taking care of the whole person and not focusing on one or two things instead of everything.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so just to cycle back in the last couple minutes to Double Take, the book that's just coming out, what's like the main theme in Double Take?
The main theme I would say is I don't think there's kind of a couple, but one of them is like I said before, not letting your past define your future. And one of them is believing in yourself.
Ooh, yeah,
Believing that you know your mind, like you believe that you believe in yourself. Yeah.
yeah. That's a great one. And then this is the first in a new series for you. And I always love your series because they stand alone, but they connect. So that for people who love seeing characters reappear or kind of following through, they can do that. But if you want to just pick one up, it works really well as to do that as at the same time. So what's connecting these? How did you come up with the idea for the series? Because Double Take has been in your mind for 5 years. So how did you
Yeah.
then connect it to more stories?
So it's funny because Andrea Doring, my editor with Revell, and I went back and forth on a couple of ideas um, before settling on this series. I had like 3 proposals that I pitched to her, and she liked this one the most because of the connection between the characters, the best friends, the fact that they were in juvie together at some point, and that's where they all met. And so that's the connection there. They all met in juvie and in California. And then they ended up coming across the country and to land in Asheville, North Carolina, in that area. And so I just thought, what kind of friends who met in juvie, how would they connect? How would they
Yeah.
stay connected? And I was like, there has to be that one person that keeps everything connected. And so,
Mhm.
and that was their the psychiatrist that they talked to while they were in juvie. But and she doesn't play a major role, but in the stories, but she did in their lives. And because I felt like they just needed that to become the people that they were by the time their stories open. And so yeah, and so they were good friends. They bonded in a place where it was hard to bond, where
Mhm.
you have to let your guard down and be vulnerable in a place you don't want to do that with.
Yeah.
And so I just thought it was an interesting concept, and Andrew loved it, so that's why we went with it.
I love it. And they're just great stories. And the characters are wonderful. And it's a great way, like you said, to see how your past doesn't define your future and doesn't define your present. So, last question. How do you celebrate when you finish writing? How did you celebrate when you finished writing Double Take?
I need to say, yeah, I think I just gave you the wrong information about that whole series. I think that was the series before, but anyway, we won't go there.
It was still great because I loved that series too. So it works.
Oh my word. No, okay, so they're
I
all
do this.
connected. I don't know. I'm brain dead at this point about this. I'm so busy working on a new book. I'm on book 3 of this series, and I'm book 4 just released, and I'm promoting that. I can't keep them straight. Okay, that's funny. Y'all, everybody can have a good laugh at that. Okay. So
Yeah.
anyway, moving on.
But you know what? That's real life. I mean, that is what it really is like as a writer. We are promoting one book while we're writing another book and then promoting another book at the same time. And it's so easy to get it all. I'm always like, what's the name of the heroine in this book? I don't know. I wrote it a year ago. And I'm thinking
Exactly.
I'm supposed to be writing one book, but I've got the page proofs for the book before it, and I'm promoting 2 others right now. And I'm just like, "Wah!"
I was
I
just
feel
like,
it.
oh,
Yeah,
okay. No,
I
actually, these
loved that
people all
series.
just kind
That
of
one's
grew up
great too.
together. Oh, okay. So where are we now?
So how did you celebrate turning in Double Take?
How do I
Or are you
celebrate?
like me and you just forget to celebrate and you turn to the next thing?
Obviously, I need to celebrate more to get my mind cleared out. But yeah, I honestly, I don't really celebrate. I know it's sad, isn't it? I just kind of move on to the next one,
Yeah.
and yeah, I'm like, okay, we're done. I'm sick of that story. I don't ever want to see it again. I'm sending it out to the publisher. Of course, then by the time the edits come, I'm like, oh, okay, this wasn't as nearly as bad as I thought it was, except that story was. But uh, Yeah.
there are always flashes where I'm like, but that's good. That
Yeah.
part's really good. And
Yeah.
it's amazing how by the time I send it in, I'm like, I hate this.
Yeah.
They're going to decide I'm a terrible writer. And then it comes back and I'm like, oh, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. I'm just sick of
Yeah.
it by the time I send it in. I'm like, get this off my desk.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's so fun talking to somebody else who knows how to do that, but and
Yeah.
it feels the same way. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so celebrating, I mean, usually, my husband will take me out to eat or something, and then we come
Yeah.
home and watch TV. I try to take a break. I take a, like a little break. Like I don't write for maybe a day and then I jump back into it because I just don't have time to take long periods of time, which,
No,
it's okay.
I
It
know.
works out.
It's we're professional writers, so it's like it's our job.
That's
And
what we do. Yeah,
and
exactly.
it's a creative outlet and we're blessed to be able to
Mhm.
do it, but it's a job. I mean, people it's so funny because I've it's been an intense year and a half of writing and my job's been intense. And people are like, well, just don't turn a book in. Tell your publisher you'll get it to them whenever. I'm like, that's not the way this works. It's a job.
Exactly.
It's
Like
a
that would be
job.
nice, but
Yeah. I would like to continue publishing. So, but it's just so funny how people are like, well, just turn it over. Like, yeah, that'll be the last book I publish. So anyway,
yeah.
Lynette, it has been so, so fun. Thank you for joining me. And it's always just a delight to talk with you and just be able to hear about your books. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Kara. It's always fun to be here.